Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Forum, a space where you will hear perspectives from global industry executives on human ingenuity and how they catalyzed it to unlock value and realize their organization's true potential. We will keep it real. We will hear what's worked well and learnings from instances where things could have worked better. I'm your host, Saquib, Vali, partner at SpyderWorks and explorer. Say hi to the future, the fast-growing community highlighting the human side of ingenuity. Our guest today is Aliza Lakhani, CEO and Dean, Northeastern University's Toronto campus. What started with a handful of students is now the largest campus outside Boston. Aliza started on the trading floor, became a well-respected banker, went on to lead business development for the DMZ, and now an educator. I think the thread I've found in all of this is that Aliza is a transformative builder with a skill for revenue generation. Aliza serves on several boards, one of them being the C.D. Howe Institute, among others. Welcome, Aliza.
Thank you so much for having me, Saquib. I'm delighted to be here today with you and your listeners.
Fantastic. So thank you for taking time out from your enlightening schedule. Aliza, let's let our listeners hear in your voice how you wish to introduce yourself to them.
I think you said it pretty well. You know, I have been thinking about my career over the last couple months as more people have been coming to me for career advice. And people have also described my career back to me. And I think the common thread is builder. I mean, I think when I started my career, it was very much about execution, going in, adding value. And I think over time, what I've come to realize is that I excel, I get motivated, I get energized when I'm creating something out of nothing. And, you know, as you sort of said, I've been in the financial services industry, I've been in the tech industry, now I'm in the educational industry. And I like that. I like going in, seeing a bit of green space, finding an opportunity, harnessing a strategy, a vision, and then executing on it to add value to the environment, to the constituents, to the community, to the world. And so I think that's what I've done is I sort of built things and created value along the way in various different forms and shapes.
And Aliza, that's exactly why you're here, because of the way you add value to the community and to the society overall. That's exactly how Say Hi to the Future came about. So thank you for being here. Aliza, you and I met a few years back as co-panelists. That was a while ago. I recall you as an insightful and filled with boundless energy. That was a few years ago. You had just accepted the role at Northeastern. Is it true that Northeastern is the only U.S. university to operate successfully in Ontario? What makes it so?
So, let me take you back and, you know, with how I sort of came into this role. So people often ask me, how did you fall into this? And you know, with anything in life, it's some combination of luck, but luck is really being at the right place at the right time, but you've done a ton of work to get there. And so actually when I was at the DMZ, when I met you, I was leading business development there, and Northeastern had sort of a shell of an operation, but we really didn't have anything. And at that, so since then, there have been maybe one or two other universities that have come to Ontario, which I think is great. It's additive. Learners deserve to have the choice. But then we were really the only ones. And we didn't have the ability to sort of operate at scale. And so when I came in, there were two students. Two employees. One student was actually an employee at the time, and we had 500 square feet. Fast forward now, you know, we have over 1,300 students, over 3 floors. We have 80 faculty. We have 40 staff members, 8 graduate programs. When we're actually moving in a year to our own standalone building, right in the entertainment district of downtown Toronto, so we'll occupy our own building in 70,000 square feet.
Wow! Congratulations.
Yeah, so I would say, you know, my journey here has been around impact. It's been around scale. And it's really also been about scaling my own mindset and my own team's mindset as you move from, you know, a scrappy startup to a scale up. to a, an operating business. And so one of the things that I constantly think about is, how do you maintain that curiosity, that growth mindset, as you actually move to actually having to do things and deliver things day to day, and you move more to an operational mindset. That's sort of what's been occupying a lot of my time as we've moved along these different stages. And then Northeastern too is a very entrepreneurial organization. We now have 14 campuses, and we have a campus also in Vancouver, a new one in Miami, one in Arlington. We have a campus in Oakland in California. And so each of our campuses has very different roles, and they're all at various stages of maturity. So this sort of growth mindset, the different scales of startup, scale up, expansion mode, is very much alive and well at Northeastern, which is a very entrepreneurial, experiential university.
Is it fair for me to then sort of conclude on this that obviously it's Aliza Lakhani, but she also happens to be with an organization that is all about this growth and success in terms of opening new campuses and making them grow, etc. So it's like hand in glove. It's a perfect fit.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think for me, it's been a perfect fit because I like to be at an organization that has that growth mindset, that's always thinking about what the next thing is, and how do we meet learners where they are. I mean, you look at the space today, you have, Chat GPT is just the thing that everyone's talking about, but learning has to be redefined. Our learners want to learn and earn at the same time while they're working. They want different modalities, right? They don't want different ways to digest information. They want it to be integrated in their lives. They want career outcomes. And so the entire learning space is transformed. So we really work hard to meet learners where they are, whether they're an undergraduate student, whether they're a graduate student, a postgraduate student, or a lifelong learner.
I'm curious, and I want to delve a bit into that. But we're going to do that in just a second, because the next area that I'm going to try and explore with you just might touch on some of them. So, not to repeat ourselves. Aliza, so say hi to the future, where HI stands for human ingenuity, right? Where we have an array of amazing ingenious thinkers that come on with Ken, and they talk about the quirky, remarkable things that they do. And then, we've got senior leaders and CEOs like yourself on this very podcast, which is all about giving us the leadership take on the human side of ingenuity, right? So let me get on to that a bit. I'd love to get your leadership take on ingenuity, and more importantly, the human side of ingenuity, as it relates to your organization's success. What does it take? When has it worked extremely well? When has it not? And frankly, what have you learned from it?
Right. That's a great question. And I love the name of your podcast. I feel very privileged to be part of an educational institution where learning and creativity and, curiosity is at the center of what we do. And so we too, as educational administrators, have to embody that. That is what employers are demanding. That's what the world is demanding. That's what our students are demanding. And so to me, what is ingenuity? It's about being creative, harnessing the power of that creative, having humility to understand what you know and what you don't know, and sort of being in that constant state of being curious and open about the future, and being able to build an organization around you that too is agile and adaptive and quick and moves with pace. I think over the last couple of years, especially, what have we learned is that you can't predict the future, right? The rate of change is happening quicker than ever before. Look at the fourth industrial revolution, all of these things coming together. And, I think we're at this point where we're trying to figure out, what is it that humans can do that machines can't do? And how do we harness our own creativity, our ability to come together? Our president talks a lot about the human skills. what are these skills that humans possess that machines don't? It's empathy, it's creativity, it's all of these human skills. And I think, to me, that is what leadership is about. It's about having that constant evolution, that growth, being curious, asking questions. I have a 3.5-year-old son, and he's constantly asking questions. This morning, he's asking questions about submarines and, what about all the fiber optics that are at the bottom of the ocean? Who's maintaining those? And I don't know about that. I don't think about these things. So we're learning together. And I just think, wow, how powerful would it be to take that curiosity of a 3.5-year-old child and to continue that on as leaders? As leaders,
your 3.5-year-old is asking you questions about submarines.
He's very curious.
All right. I don't know if I learned how to speak at 3.5-year-old, but okay, fair enough. We'll keep going with this.
I'll bring him on to the next pod. I'd be delighted.
There we go. I'd love to have him on.
But at some point in life, where do we lose that ability to be curious and ask questions and have the humility to say, I don't know, let's learn from the Uber driver, let's learn from this person, let's learn from the CEO, and you're doing that beautifully here. So we need to carve out time to have these conversations and to foster that growth mindset and that learning mindset with our teams and with ourselves and within ourselves.
So give me an example of the time when, so, you've mentioned, and this is why I was saying some of it might come into this conversation, which is you've spoken about a few things, right? And I love how your CEO and you guys are thinking about all of this, which is, we always ask, what can a computer or a machine do better than a human, right? Or something that the human cannot do. But you guys are asking the opposite, and that's exactly what we are doing. Which is, what is it that only humans can do that a machine or a computer can never perform, right? And that's exactly how you guys are going. So give me a couple of examples of how is it that you guys are doing that in a way which is keeping pace with the change, but also innovating in an area where human skills are most celebrated and furthered.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of different things. One of the things that we're doing as we're growing more is really trying to listen to the community and understand how to be responsive to that. So one of the things that, we could go on and just have the regular, you have the enrollment function, you have the marketing function, you have the delivery, you have the faculty, but at the end of the day, if we're building an institution in this amazing province of Ontario, in Toronto, we need to be learning from the community and contributing back to the community. And how do you do that? You do that through listening. So one of the things that we're starting to do now is bring in not-for-profits, bring in community stakeholders they're not our students, they don't have a direct tie to the organization, but we're figuring out how to work with them to help solve their problems. So we're working with organizations like the Yonge Street Mission, for example. We're working with other community organizations that are benefiting, and our students are going there and they're doing co-op terms there, and our students are doing non-for-profit assignments there. So I would say we're trying to listen to the community and respond to that. If you were to follow the typical model of, this is how a university should be, this is what a student should do, you would miss those opportunities to give back. I also think we need to be listening. All of us need to be listening to our clients. If you're in a private enterprise here, we're listening to our students, we're listening to industry, and we're trying to be responsive to that. We had a very large industry. We work with a lot of industry partners to do upskilling and retraining as well. And because we're listening to them, because we're having conversations with them, we're understanding what their talent gaps are. And then we're constantly designing solutions to help fill those talent gaps, whether it's around having a hackathon for them, whether it's around delivering the corporate programming for them. But if we were always just saying, here's this course, you use it, you fit our model, that's never going to work. You're always going to have this disconnect. So, our big thing is, how are we listening? How are we asking smart questions? How am I enabling members of my team to, color outside the lines? Just because you're doing this, that doesn't mean you need to stay in this lane. Swim lanes are interesting because there's no concrete blocks between swim lanes. You should be able to move in and out. So sometimes with my team members, I deliberately deliberately give them assignments that are overlapping, just
Mm-hmm.
promote collaboration. I think if we have such defined lines and defined boxes, that sense of conformity doesn't allow for scale and innovation. You can't demand conformity and perfection and having everyone in a box. I don't think that works. Sometimes a little bit of messy creates new ideas and sparks curiosity and innovation.
I love this. This is absolutely fine because we speak exactly about that, Aliza, which is, um, you know, the it is good. There is a lot of beauty in the mess that gets created, right? And maybe not mess that gets created, but more in the messy process, amazing outcomes come through. Let me ask you. So obviously, the line from where you started with one, a few employees, a handful of employees and students, to where you are right now, it's always good to think of that as a straight line. It's never a straight line. So I'm sure something must have gone awry at some point in time. Give us an example of how that happened, but then you took the human side of ingenuity to actually come out of it better, stronger, better.
Yeah, this requires some self-reflection, and it requires you to think about your own growth, and being open to to self-growth and reflection, and having, I think, the courage to do so. I think courage is a really underrated skill in leadership. Courage and humility both. I think for me, when I came into this role, I came in with a checklist. I had never managed anything at this scale, at this level. But it was like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. It was very operational minded. It was much about proving to myself, proving to everyone else that I could excel and do this job. And I took everything was a priority. Everything was a fire. Everything was very serious. But what happens when you do that is that you can't operate that way when you have such a big task in front of you, when you have, to solve the universe. How do you operate that way? You need to prioritize. And so I got some advice early on, and the person said, you need to know when you're in the arena and when you're not in the arena. And when you're in the arena, you fight, you do it, you figure it out, you have that tough conversation, you get that outcome. But when you're not in the arena, when you're not sparring or fighting or figuring it out or solving this huge problem, then you can be different. It's okay to let your guard down, and it's okay to think about things. And to me, that was very powerful because it allowed me to have the grace and the permission to step out when I needed to. And then that's when I would have the ability to reflect and to think about things and to think about other things that needed to be built that maybe weren't that burning need and that priority. So, I mean, that advice has, I think, served me quite well. And I think also, I was listening to one of your podcasts, and one of your previous guests talked about grace. And that really resonated with me too, is giving yourself grace and permission. And, I there are some complexities. I'm a woman of color. I grew up with my parents. I'm the first one in my family to go to university. There are certain complexities and certain expectations, and we could talk about failure for hours. And so giving yourself the ability to experiment and giving yourself space is something that I think I've learned over time, and I think that served me well.
You referencing that quote from Emily Chang is so cool. You're absolutely right. I think there's so much you've said over here, and to me, as we think about what humans can do that machines cannot, I think this whole self-reflection is something that is very human. Seeking other people's advice is very human. You know, I think listening in how AI is right now set up, maybe it listens to everything, but and it has its parameters in what it listens to and what it doesn't. But how do you take that listening and then turn it into self-reflection? I think that is a human quality, and then in times there are times where you would go ahead and take that courageous leap, which an AI or a machine is not designed to take a courageous leap, which is again very human. Um, so thank you. I think that's absolutely right. Um, let me see if I can change this conversation a bit more towards your trajectory and your sort of career. So, trading floor, uh, banker, financial institutions, the DMC, and now an educator. Looking back, was that always the plan? Or would you do anything differently if you got a chance to retrace your steps and walk the path again?
I didn't have a plan. And I think more and more the traditional mold of, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, that is just disappearing. I mean, what I tell young people now is you have to learn how to learn. The best thing you can do is be curious, be open to new ideas. And no one can teach you that. That sort of has to come from within. Be curious, ask questions. As a if as a parent, if for my son, my goal is to have him open to different experiences, to have him be curious, so that when he's put in a situation that I don't know what that situation is going to be, because the world is going to look very different 5, 10, 20 years from now. So he's able to be adaptable to ask those questions. So, I think as much as people think they have plans, those plans are always changing because the rate of pace is always changing in the world. But going back to me, no, that wasn't the plan at all. I mean, if someone told you I was going to be an educator, I would say, what? Absolutely not. But for me, I gravitate to smart, curious people who are doing things with integrity to help elevate people. So to me, anything I do has to have a purpose. And I think I was really drawn to this role because there was opportunity to create an impact, to serve a need, to innovate in the education space in a way that, wasn't really being done before, to be a leader. I think I didn't gravitate to it for any other reason other than I could build something, we could create a legacy, and we could do something really, really wonderful for the community here and for the people. But no, I mean, I think I've followed interesting people who allow me to develop my skill sets, where I can make an impact, where I can really change the world for the better and leave things a little bit better than where I found them.
You just said something which is so cool, and there are so many successful people whom I've come in contact with, had these conversations with. You said you followed interesting people, right? It's not just about having a dream in your own head. It's about who can I associate with, who's doing interesting things, and how can I associate with them in order to keep doing more of some interesting things like that. So that is again a very human quality and an amazingly said. Um, our time it's funny how when you're having fun, time goes past so fast. What would your advice be to other leaders?
I would say a couple things. The first thing I would say is lead with intention. Leadership is really hard. Leadership skills are also human skills. So, lead with intention, figure out what kind of leader you're going to be, and just be genuinely interested in people, right? The most successful, the most interesting people are the ones who are interested in people. They ask questions, but you have to do it with intention and like you really mean it. You have to form those human connections with people. And when you make a mistake, own up to it. As a leader, people are always watching you. If you're constantly, projecting perfection, that's what others will expect. And then a barrier gets created. Just yesterday, I said something in a meeting that afterwards I realized, I really shouldn't have said that. That what I said was right. It was the timing that wasn't right. And I did this in front of a couple people. And it wasn't something terrible. It was just something that I think could have been better. And so I brought the person into my office and we had a conversation about it. And I was, it's not easy to do that. It takes courage. It takes a little bit of humility, but I think you can't lose that human side. You can't stop being an agent of curiosity, and you can't stop trying to instill that curiosity in others. At the end of the day, my job is to develop other leaders. It's to develop capacity. I can't do everything myself. I can't be the only leader. And so you do that by practicing and exercising your human skills and your managerial courage.
Leadership is a human skill. and it, a role of a leader is to develop capacity in other leaders. I think that's well said. And then this whole conversation around um, having the courage, giving yourself grace, I think is a theme that's coming out extremely well. So thank you again, Aliza, for taking the time and sharing your insights. Our listeners would love to hear more from you. We will tag you and Northeastern in our show notes. But before we let you go, was there anything that you wanted our listeners to benefit from that I did not ask you, or I did not address?
No, I think I just thank you, Saquib, for having me on this wonderful podcast, for asking me great questions. And I think I've learned a lot from you in the way you're asking the questions, and also the other guests that you're bringing on. So just thank you for constantly pushing us to lead with curiosity and lead with humility and being open to new ways of doing things and thinking. So I thank you very much, and wish you guys all the best.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye. The Say Hi to the Future podcast series is produced by Sonia Romero, edited by Matt Miller, and special effects by Edward Vasquez. Please leave us your thoughts and let us know if there's a guest you want us to have a conversation with. You can find all Say Hi to the Future podcast series on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.